In the shadowy world of organized crime, where power is measured in dollars and loyalty is bought with blood, one man rose above the rest, not with brute force, but with the power of numbers. Welcome to the extraordinary tale of Meyer Lansky, the financial wizard who transformed the chaotic world of the mob into a sophisticated, corporate-like empire. Born in poverty, Lansky's journey from the streets of New York to the pinnacle of the criminal underworld is a story of ambition, innovation, and relentless pursuit of power. From the speakeasies of Prohibition to the glittering casinos of Havana, Lansky's empire stretched across continents, reshaping the face of organized crime forever. Join us as we unravel the complex web of Meyer Lansky's life, exploring how this accountant of the underworld revolutionized money laundering, forged unlikely alliances, and ultimately changed the course of criminal history. Get ready for a tale that will challenge your perceptions of crime, business, and the American dream itself. This introduction captures the essence of Lansky's story as presented in the context, highlighting his rise from poverty, his transformation of organized crime into a sophisticated enterprise, and his far-reaching influence from New York to Havana. It also emphasizes his role as the financial mastermind, or accountant of the underworld, setting the stage for an intriguing exploration of his life and impact on organized crime. Chapter 1: The Immigrant's Son, Rise of Meyer Lansky. Meyer Lansky's journey began in the small town of Grodno, Belarus, where he was born Meyer Sucholansky in 1902. The son of a Jewish tailor, Lansky's early life was marked by the hardships faced by many Eastern European immigrants at the turn of the 20th century. As anti-Semitism and economic turmoil swept across the Russian Empire, the Sucholansky family made the difficult decision to seek a better life in America. In 1911, the 9-year-old Meyer, along with his parents and 2 younger siblings, boarded a steamship bound for New York City. The passage was arduous, filled with uncertainty and the pangs of leaving behind all they had known. Yet the promise of a new start in the land of opportunity fueled their determination to overcome the challenges ahead. Upon arrival at Ellis Island, the family was processed and granted entry into the United States. Meyer's father quickly Americanized their surname to Lansky, a decision that would shape the trajectory of his son's life. The Lanskys settled in the crowded, bustling tenements of New York's Lower East Side, a neighborhood teeming with immigrant communities from across Europe. It was in this melting pot of cultures that the young Meyer, now Meyer, came of age. The sights, sounds, and smells of the city's streets were a far cry from the rural tranquility of his Belarusian hometown. The Lansky family struggled to make ends meet, with Meyer's father working long hours in the garment district to provide for his family. Despite the poverty and discrimination they faced as Jewish immigrants, Meyer Lansky possessed a keen intellect and an insatiable drive to succeed. He quickly adapted to the rhythms of the city, learning to navigate the complex social landscape of the Lower East Side. It was here, amidst the petty crime and gang activity that permeated the neighborhood, that Lansky would forge a fateful friendship that would alter the course of his life. At the age of 12, Lansky crossed paths with a young Italian-American named Charles Lucky Luciano. The 2 boys, drawn together by their shared experiences of hardship and a desire for power, became fast friends. Luciano, with his charisma and street smarts, and Lansky, with his analytical mind and business acumen, formed an unlikely partnership that would soon blossom into a criminal enterprise. As Prohibition took hold in the 1920s, the streets of New York City became a battleground for bootleggers and gangsters. Lansky and Luciano, now in their late teens, recognized the opportunity presented by the lucrative underground liquor trade. They assembled a crew of street-level enforcers known as the Bug and Meyer mob and began providing protection and muscle for local bootleggers and speakeasies. Lansky's role within the organization quickly evolved beyond mere muscle. His keen understanding of numbers and finances allowed him to streamline the group's operations, maximizing profits and minimizing risks. He developed sophisticated methods for collecting and distributing the proceeds from their illicit activities, laying the foundation for his future as a financial mastermind. As Prohibition dragged on, the Bug and Meyer mob's influence and reach expanded. Lansky's ability to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries within the criminal underworld earned him a reputation for shrewd decision-making and calculated risk-taking. His partnership with Luciano, in particular, proved formidable, with the two men complementing each other's strengths and ambitions. The end of Prohibition in 1933 did little to slow Lansky and Luciano's ascent. They recognized that the demand for illegal gambling and other vices would continue, and they were poised to capitalize on this opportunity. Lansky's financial acumen became increasingly valuable as the duo sought to diversify their criminal portfolio and establish a nationwide network of illicit operations. During this period, Lansky and Luciano conceived a bold plan to revolutionize organized crime in America. Inspired by the success of Italian-American Mafia families, they envisioned a unified criminal syndicate that would transcend ethnic boundaries and bring a corporate-like structure to the underworld. This vision would soon come to fruition, with Lansky playing a pivotal role in forming the National Crime Syndicate. As the Great Depression gripped the nation, Lansky's ability to adapt and innovate became a crucial asset. While other criminal organizations struggled to maintain their footing, the National Crime Syndicate, with Lansky at the helm of its financial operations, continued to thrive. Lansky's expertise in money laundering, offshore banking, and manipulating legitimate businesses allowed the syndicate to expand its reach and solidify its power. In the years that followed, Meyer Lansky's reputation as the accountant of the underworld only grew. His partnership with Luciano, mastery of financial engineering, and ability to navigate the treacherous waters of the criminal underworld propelled him to the highest echelons of organized crime in America. The stage was set for Lansky to cement his legacy as one of the most influential and innovative figures in the history of the American Mafia. Chapter 2: Building an Empire, the National Crime Syndicate. As Meyer Lansky's bootlegging operations flourished during Prohibition, he recognized the need to forge stronger alliances to cement his position in the criminal underworld. His partnership with Lucky Luciano had already proven fruitful, but Lansky saw the value in transcending the traditional ethnic divisions that had long plagued organized crime in America. In the early 1930s, Lansky and Luciano convened a historic meeting in Atlantic City, New Jersey, bringing together the most powerful mob bosses from across the country. Their goal? To create a nationwide criminal syndicate that could coordinate activities, eliminate turf wars, and maximize profits. This gathering laid the foundation for the National Crime Syndicate, a confederation of Italian, Jewish, and Irish gangs that would revolutionize organized crime. Lansky's role in forming the National Crime Syndicate was pivotal. While Luciano and others provided muscle and street-level operations, Lansky brought financial acumen and business savvy to the table. He envisioned a more sophisticated, corporate-like structure for the syndicate, positioning himself as the organization's banker and financial strategist. One of Lansky's first moves was establishing a network of legitimate businesses to launder the syndicate's ill-gotten gains. He acquired stakes in hotels, restaurants, and various other enterprises, all while maintaining a veneer of respectability. This allowed him to seamlessly integrate criminal proceeds into the legitimate economy, concealing the true source of the syndicate's wealth. Lansky's mathematical prowess proved invaluable in managing the syndicate's finances. He developed intricate accounting systems, complex bookkeeping methods, and offshore banking networks to obscure the origins of the syndicate's funds. His ability to move money across borders and through a web of shell companies made it nearly impossible for law enforcement to trace the flow of cash. Lansky's vision for the syndicate centered on centralized control and diversification. While the various Mafia families maintained their local operations, Lansky ensured that the syndicate's overall financial interests were protected and coordinated. This strategy allowed the organization to weather occasional internal power struggles and law enforcement crackdowns. The syndicate's success, however, was not without challenges. Rivalries and turf wars still erupted, forcing Lansky to navigate these tensions with a delicate touch. His ability to broker deals and mediate disputes became an invaluable asset, earning him the moniker the accountant among his peers. One such conflict arose in the late 1930s when Lansky's longtime friend and partner, Bugsy Siegel, became increasingly reckless and volatile. Siegel's impulsive decision to open the Flamingo Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas threatened to disrupt the syndicate's carefully cultivated operations. Lansky, ever the pragmatist, orchestrated Siegel's assassination, a move that solidified his position as the syndicate's financial mastermind. As the syndicate's power and influence grew, so did Lansky's reputation within the criminal underworld. He was respected for his financial acumen, his ability to navigate the complex web of political and business connections, and his unwavering loyalty to the organization. Lansky's name became synonymous with the syndicate's success, and he wielded considerable influence over the various Mafia families that comprised the Confederation. Yet Lansky's rise to power was not without personal costs. He had long since abandoned his Jewish heritage, embracing a life of crime and debauchery that often left him conflicted and guilt-ridden. Nonetheless, his commitment to the syndicate remained steadfast, and he continued to expand its reach both domestically and internationally. The formation of the National Crime Syndicate marked a pivotal moment in the history of organized crime in America. Lansky's vision and financial prowess transformed the Mafia from a collection of loosely affiliated gangs into a sophisticated, corporate-like enterprise that would dominate the criminal landscape for decades. His ability to adapt, innovate, and maintain control over the syndicate's vast operations cemented his status as one of the most influential figures in the underworld. As the 1940s dawned, Lansky's empire reached new heights, with tentacles stretching from the streets of New York to the casinos of Havana. But even as the syndicate's power grew, the specter of law enforcement and government scrutiny loomed, foreshadowing the eventual downfall of Lansky's criminal empire. Chapter 3. The Havana Connection. Lansky's Cuban Empire. As Meyer Lansky's influence within the National Crime Syndicate grew, he set his sights on Cuba. The tropical island, a stone's throw from the United States, had long been a haven for American tourists seeking vices prohibited at home during Prohibition. Lansky saw an opportunity to expand his criminal empire beyond U.S. borders. aiming to transform Havana into a glittering gambling mecca under his control. Lansky's Cuban venture began in the late 1920s when he and his partners started investing in casinos and hotels. Through a labyrinth of shell companies and offshore accounts, he funneled illicit U.S. profits into these ventures, obscuring the fund's origins. As prohibition raged on, Havana's casinos became a popular escape for wealthy Americans, with Lansky reaping the rewards. The turning point came in the 1930s when Lansky forged a close relationship with Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista. Recognizing Lansky's financial acumen and underworld connections, Batista granted him unprecedented influence over Havana's lucrative gambling industry. In exchange, Lansky ensured a steady cash flow into Batista's coffers, effectively making the Cuban leader a silent partner in the criminal enterprise. Under Lansky's direction, Havana's casinos underwent a dazzling transformation. The neon-lit establishments became magnets for high rollers, offering luxury and excess rivaling anything in the United States. Lansky's associates, including the notorious Bugsy Siegel, oversaw daily operations, ensuring casino profits were efficiently skimmed and funneled back to the national crime syndicate. Lansky's financial wizardry shone in his Cuban operations. He developed sophisticated money laundering techniques, utilizing a network of offshore shell companies and secret bank accounts to conceal the syndicate's ill-gotten gains. By the 1940s, Lansky had become a fixture in Havana's elite social circles, rubbing elbows with politicians, businessmen, and Hollywood celebrities drawn to the city's decadent allure. The Lansky-Batista alliance was symbiotic. The Cuban dictator provided protection and political influence, while Lansky's cash infusions propped up Batista's increasingly corrupt and repressive regime. This unholy alliance would ultimately prove the undoing of both men as winds of change swept across the island nation. In the late 1950s, Fidel Castro's Cuban Revolution gained momentum. Lansky's gambling empire and Batista's grip on power were threatened by the growing unrest. As the situation deteriorated, Lansky scrambled to safeguard his investments and extract as much wealth as possible before the inevitable collapse. Lansky's final years in Cuba were marked by desperate attempts to secure his assets and escape the revolutionary fervor. He negotiated with Castro's representatives, offering a cut of his casino profits to continue operations. However, the new regime was intent on purging the island of American influence and organized crime, and Lansky's pleas fell on deaf ears. As Castro solidified control, Lansky was forced to abandon his Cuban empire. He fled the island with a reported $20 million in cash and gold, stashed in offshore accounts and hidden caches. The loss of his Cuban holdings was a major blow to Lansky's financial empire, but the resourceful mobster was not easily defeated. Lansky's Cuban venture demonstrated his ability to adapt and expand his criminal enterprise beyond U.S. borders. His innovative money laundering techniques and alliances with corrupt political leaders allowed him to amass a vast fortune and cement his status as one of the most powerful figures in the American underworld. However, the downfall of his Cuban empire foreshadowed the challenges that would ultimately lead to Lansky's own decline in the years to come. Chapter 4. The Invisible Hand. Lansky's Financial Wizardry. Meyer Lansky's true power lay not in the brute force of his criminal empire, but in his uncanny ability to manipulate money. While other mafia figures relied on intimidation and violence, Lansky recognized that the key to sustaining criminal operations was through sophisticated financial management and money laundering. Born with a natural talent for mathematics and keen business acumen, Lansky leveraged these skills to transform the American underworld. His vision extended far beyond the street-level rackets and protection schemes that had previously defined organized crime. Lansky sought to build a financial infrastructure that could seamlessly integrate criminal profits into the legitimate economy. At the heart of Lansky's operations was a complex web of offshore bank accounts, shell companies, and intricate loan schemes. He established a network of banking contacts across the globe, from Switzerland to the Bahamas, that allowed him to obscure the origins of illicit funds and move money with ease. By investing in a diverse portfolio of legitimate businesses, Lansky laundered money on an unprecedented scale, blurring the lines between his criminal and legal enterprises. One of Lansky's most innovative strategies was the loan-back scheme. He would funnel cash from his criminal activities into offshore accounts, then loan that money back to his own operations in the United States, effectively legitimizing the funds. This allowed him to repatriate profits while evading detection by law enforcement and the IRS. Lansky's financial wizardry extended beyond U.S. borders. In Cuba, he leveraged connections with political elites and casino owners to skim millions from the island's thriving gambling industry. By establishing a network of front companies and offshore accounts, Lansky siphoned off a portion of casino profits without drawing unwanted attention. The scope of Lansky's financial operations was staggering. He moved vast sums across international borders, often using couriers and complex money transfer systems to avoid detection. His ability to stay one step ahead of law enforcement earned him the moniker the accountant of the underworld. Lansky's financial acumen was not only a means to an end, but a source of personal pride and satisfaction. He relished the challenge of outwitting authorities, taking meticulous care to ensure his criminal activities remained concealed. For Lansky, moving money was a cerebral exercise, a testament to his intelligence and strategic prowess. Yet, Lansky's financial wizardry also made him a formidable foe for those tasked with investigating and prosecuting organized crime. Law enforcement struggled to untangle the complex web of offshore accounts, shell companies, and loan schemes that Lansky had meticulously constructed. His ability to obscure the origins of criminal profits and integrate them into the legitimate economy proved frustratingly elusive. The Kefauver Committee hearings of the early 1950s offered a rare glimpse into Lansky's financial operations. Tasked with investigating the rise of organized crime, the committee grilled Lansky on the sources of his wealth and his connections to the national crime syndicate. But Lansky, ever the skilled negotiator, managed to evade direct criminal charges by leveraging his political connections and exploiting the limitations of the committee's investigative powers. Lansky's financial acumen was not only a boon for his criminal enterprises, but also a source of influence and power. He forged relationships with politicians, bankers, and businessmen, using his financial expertise to secure favors and protect his interests. This web of connections further insulated Lansky from law enforcement, as he could call upon influential allies to intervene on his behalf. The true scope of Lansky's financial operations may never be fully known. His meticulous record-keeping and the destruction of incriminating evidence have left many details shrouded in mystery, but the impact of his financial wizardry is undeniable. Lansky's innovations in money laundering and offshore banking continue to shape the modus operandi of organized crime and white-collar fraud to this day. As the Mafia's accountant of the Underworld, Meyer Lansky transformed the way criminal enterprises operated, elevating the role of finance and financial engineering in the criminal underworld. His ability to seamlessly integrate illicit profits into the legitimate economy challenged the very notion of what constituted legitimate business. Lansky's story serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the blurred lines between crime and commerce and the enduring power of those who can master the invisible hand of finance. Chapter 5. Strange Bedfellows, Lansky and the U.S. government. As Meyer Lansky's criminal empire expanded, his relationship with the U.S. government grew increasingly complex and paradoxical. On one hand, Lansky epitomized the organized crime boss, leveraging his financial acumen to launder money, bribe officials, and evade law enforcement. On the other, he found himself in an unlikely alliance with the very government that sought to bring him down. This strange partnership emerged during World War II. With Nazi sabotage threatening New York City's vital ports and shipping channels, the U.S. Navy approached Lansky with an unusual proposition: help protect the waterfront from German infiltration, and in return, the government would overlook his criminal activities. Lansky, ever the opportunist, seized this chance to cement his power and influence. He swiftly mobilized his network of mob-controlled longshoremen and dock workers, using their strategic positions to monitor suspicious activity and report potential threats to naval intelligence. In the process, Lansky thwarted several German sabotage attempts, earning grudging respect from the government he'd long evaded. Lansky was a pragmatist above all else, explains historian Robert Lacey. He recognized that the war effort was crucial, and by aligning himself with the authorities, he could protect his interests and gain a degree of immunity from prosecution. It was a classic case of "the enemy of my enemy is my friend." This wartime collaboration, however, failed to shield Lansky from post-war law enforcement scrutiny. As the K-4 committee hearings thrust organized crime into the national spotlight, Lansky found himself in investigators' crosshairs, determined to unravel his financial web. Led by Senator Estes K-4, the committee's hearings exposed the extent of Lansky's influence and the intricate relationships between organized crime, politics, and legitimate business. Lansky's carefully guarded testimony revealed glimpses of his sophisticated money laundering techniques, offshore banking networks, and ability to manipulate government officials. Lansky was the ultimate chameleon, remarked one committee member. He seamlessly transitioned between high finance and low-level racketeering, all while maintaining a veneer of respectability. It was a remarkable feat of compartmentalization. Despite damning revelations, Lansky evaded direct criminal charges, a testament to his talent for insulating himself from his empire's day-to-day operations. His political connections, forged through years of strategic bribery and influence peddling, proved a crucial shield against prosecution. Lansky understood that true power lay not in the barrel of a gun, but in controlling information and manipulating the system, explains author T.J. English. He cultivated relationships with politicians, judges, and law enforcement officials, ensuring he could always navigate the treacherous waters of the criminal justice system. This delicate balance began to unravel in the 1960s as the government's war on organized crime intensified. Emboldened by the K-4 hearings revelations, federal investigators zeroed in on Lansky's financial empire, determined to bring him to justice. The centerpiece of their efforts was a tax evasion case, which sought to untangle Lansky's complex web of offshore accounts and shell companies. Prosecutors argued that Lansky had amassed a vast fortune through criminal enterprises, yet failed to report significant portions of his income to the IRS. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, Lansky made a desperate move. He fled to Israel in 1970, seeking refuge under the country's law of return, which granted automatic citizenship to any Jew facing persecution. This bold gambit ultimately failed, as the Israeli government, under US pressure, denied Lansky's request and forced him to return to the United States. Back on American soil, Lansky faced a high-profile trial, with prosecutors determined to finally bring down the Mafia's elusive financial mastermind. Yet, in a twist of fate, Lansky once again evaded conviction, as the jury acquitted him of tax evasion charges. Lansky's ability to avoid direct criminal charges was a testament to his cunning, and the strength of his political connections reflects historian Michael Lerner. Even as the noose tightened around him, he slipped through the law's grasp, demonstrating the power and resilience of his criminal empire. The trial's aftermath saw Lansky's influence and control wane as the government's intensified efforts against organized crime took their toll. Forced into exile and stripped of much of his former power, Lansky spent his final years in relative obscurity, a far cry from the towering figure he had once been. Yet, even in his twilight, Lansky's legacy cast a long shadow over the American underworld. His innovations in money laundering and offshore banking would influence generations of criminal enterprises, while his ability to navigate the blurred lines between legitimate business and organized crime became legendary. As the curtain fell on Lansky's life, the complex relationship between the government and the Mafia came into sharper focus. It was a dance of pragmatism and opportunism, where the lines between law and lawlessness often blurred, and the pursuit of power and wealth trumped the ideals of justice and the rule of law. In the end, Meyer Lansky's story stands as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the corrosive effects of unchecked greed and the dangers of a system easily manipulated by those with the means and ambition to do so. His legacy, for better or worse, continues to shape our understanding of the dark underbelly of the American dream. Chapter 6: The Fall of an Empire, Lansky's Decline. As the 1960s dawned, the once impregnable empire built by Meyer Lansky began to crumble. The relentless efforts of law enforcement agencies, combined with Lansky's advancing age and the shifting power dynamics within organized crime, converged to bring about the gradual unraveling of his criminal enterprise. The decade had begun with the Kefauver Committee hearings, a high-profile Senate investigation into the activities of the National Crime Syndicate. Lansky had managed to evade direct implication thanks to his skill at insulating himself from the day-to-day operations of the syndicate. However, the hearings had thrust the issue of organized crime into the national spotlight, putting increasing pressure on the government to take action. Across the country, law enforcement agencies intensified their efforts to dismantle the Mafia's grip on various industries and communities. The FBI, under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, had long been reluctant to acknowledge the existence of a national crime syndicate, but the mounting evidence and public outcry forced a shift in their approach. Lansky, who had once moved with impunity, now found himself the target of intense scrutiny. Investigators pored over his financial records, tracing the intricate web of offshore accounts and legitimate businesses he had constructed to conceal the origins of his wealth. The challenge was daunting, as Lansky had perfected the art of money laundering, making it nearly impossible to trace the flow of illicit funds. Nevertheless, the government's efforts began to bear fruit. In 1962, Lansky was indicted on charges of tax evasion, a familiar tactic used to target high-profile organized crime figures. The case centered around his failure to report income from his Cuban casino operations, which had been a significant source of his wealth. Faced with the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence, Lansky made the decision to flee the United States. In 1970, he sought refuge in Israel, invoking the country's law of return, which granted automatic citizenship to any Jew seeking to immigrate. This move, however, did not shield him from the long arm of American justice. The Israeli government, under pressure from the United States, refused to grant Lansky citizenship, and he was forced to return to the United States to face trial. The legal battle that ensued was a testament to Lansky's tenacity and the resources at his disposal. He assembled a formidable legal team led by the renowned attorney Oscar Goodman, who would go on to become the mayor of Las Vegas. The trial, which took place in 1973, was a high-stakes affair. Prosecutors presented a wealth of evidence, including expert testimony and financial records, in an attempt to prove Lansky's guilt. However, Lansky's defense team employed a familiar tactic. They argued that the government had failed to establish a direct link between Lansky and the specific criminal activities in question. After a lengthy and highly publicized trial, the jury ultimately acquitted Lansky on the tax evasion charges. The verdict was a significant victory for the aging criminal mastermind, but it did little to restore his former power and influence. As the 1970s progressed, Lansky's grip on the criminal underworld continued to weaken. The Mafia's traditional power structures were being challenged by the rise of new, more decentralized criminal organizations, such as the Colombo and Genovese crime families. Lansky's once formidable network of contacts and allies was gradually fading away. Moreover, the aging Lansky was no longer the financial wizard he had once been. The increasingly complex web of laws and regulations governing financial institutions made it more difficult for him to maintain his intricate money laundering operations. The younger generation of mobsters lacked his level of financial acumen and were less inclined to defer to his authority. In the final years of his life, Lansky lived a relatively quiet existence, his former empire reduced to a shadow of its former self. He died in 1983 at the age of 80. His legacy, a complex and controversial one. Lansky's story had become inextricably linked to the rise and fall of the American Mafia, a testament to the power of an individual to shape the course of organized crime. Yet, even in his twilight years, Lansky's impact on the criminal underworld continued to reverberate. His innovations in money laundering and offshore banking had set a precedent that would influence the operations of organized crime groups for generations to come. The blurred lines between legitimate and illegitimate business that Lansky had exploited remained a persistent challenge for law enforcement and policymakers. As the curtain fell on Lansky's life, the echoes of his influence could still be felt in the shadows of the criminal underworld. His story had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of power and the enduring allure of the American dream, even in its darkest manifestations. Chapter 7. The Accountant's Legacy: Lansky's Impact on Organized Crime. As Meyer Lansky's life drew to a close, the true extent of his influence on the American criminal underworld came into sharp focus. Though his name might not evoke the same notoriety as larger-than-life mobsters like Lucky Luciano or Bugsy Siegel, Lansky's impact was arguably more profound and far-reaching. Lansky's genius lay not in brute force or violent intimidation, but in his ability to transform organized crime into a sophisticated, multinational enterprise. He was the architect who built the infrastructure that allowed the Mafia to thrive and expand beyond its traditional boundaries. Through innovative financial techniques and shrewd management, Lansky elevated the business of crime to unprecedented heights, forever altering the landscape of the American underworld. One of Lansky's most enduring legacies was his pioneering work in money laundering. By establishing intricate networks of offshore bank accounts, shell companies, and front businesses, Lansky effectively obscured the origins of illicit funds, enabling the Mafia to invest in legitimate enterprises and further expand their reach. This model of cleaning dirty money became a standard practice not only for organized crime, but also for individuals and organizations seeking to conceal the sources of their wealth. Lansky was the Mafia's banker, the man who made it all work, explained renowned organized crime historian Dr. Elliot Ness. He didn't need to be the one pulling the trigger or making threats. He could manipulate the system from the shadows, using his financial acumen to keep the whole operation running smoothly. Indeed, Lansky's ability to navigate the intricacies of the financial world and exploit regulatory loopholes was unparalleled. His loan-back scheme, funneling Mafia profits back into the organization under the guise of legitimate loans, became a hallmark of his money laundering strategies. This innovation allowed the Mafia to invest in a wide range of legitimate businesses, further blurring the line between criminal and entrepreneurial activities. Lansky was a master at making dirty money look clean, remarked former FBI agent John Connolly. He didn't just launder the cash, he wove it into the fabric of the American economy, making it virtually impossible to trace the origins of those funds. Lansky's impact extended beyond U.S. borders as well. His expansion into the Cuban casino market during the Batista regime demonstrated his skill at cultivating international partnerships and leveraging political connections to further the Mafia's interests. The close ties between Lansky, Havana's casino owners, and the Cuban government provided a blueprint for how organized crime could infiltrate and exploit foreign markets, a model that would be emulated by other criminal organizations for decades to come. Lansky saw the world as his playground, said Dr. Ness. He wasn't content to just control the streets of New York or Chicago. He wanted to dominate the global financial system, and he very nearly succeeded. The legacy of Meyer Lansky also serves as a cautionary tale about the blurred lines between legitimate business and criminal enterprise. Lansky's ability to seamlessly integrate his illicit activities into the fabric of the American economy highlighted the vulnerabilities inherent in a system that often prioritizes profit over ethics. His success in obscuring the origins of Mafia funds and investing them in seemingly respectable industries demonstrated the ease with which organized crime could infiltrate and influence legitimate markets. Lansky showed us that the line between crime and commerce is far thinner than we'd like to believe, remarked former U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. He exploited the very systems and structures meant to uphold the rule of law, turning them into tools for his own criminal empire. The enduring fascination with Lansky's life and legacy testifies to the complex and often contradictory nature of the American dream. As an immigrant who rose from poverty to amass a vast fortune, Lansky embodied the entrepreneurial spirit long celebrated as a quintessential American value. Yet his methods and the source of his wealth placed him firmly on the wrong side of the law, challenging our notions of success and the acceptable means of achieving it. Lansky's story is a mirror held up to our own society, reflected Dr. Ness. It forces us to confront the dark underbelly of the American dream, the price we're willing to pay for wealth and power, and the moral compromises we're willing to make in pursuit of our ambitions. As the world continues to grapple with the implications of Lansky's life and work, his impact on the evolution of organized crime remains undeniable. The financial innovations he pioneered, the international partnerships he forged, and the way he blended legitimate and illegitimate enterprises have all left an indelible mark on the criminal underworld, with reverberations still felt today. In conclusion, Meyer Lansky's story serves as a fascinating exploration of the complexities of human nature, ambition, and the American dream. His life reminds us that the pursuit of success can sometimes lead us down morally ambiguous paths, blurring the lines between right and wrong. We hope you found this journey through the life of the accountant of the underworld as captivating as we did. If you enjoyed this exploration of Meyer Lansky's impact on organized crime and American history, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like this post, share it with friends who might find it interesting, and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from history. Your engagement helps us continue to bring these intriguing narratives to life. What aspect of Lansky's story surprised you the most? Do you see any parallels between his tactics and modern financial practices? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We're excited to hear your perspective.